My beloved child. In 10 quiet minutes, something inside you may finally become impossible to ignore. Not because a clock is threatening you, and not because anything terrible is approaching, but because your heart has been standing at the edge of a truth it can no longer pretend not to recognize. You felt it before you opened this message, a strange pause in the middle of your thoughts, a pressure behind your ribs, the unmistakable sense that today was carrying something meant specifically for you. Stay with me, because what is waiting at the end is connected to a moment you almost dismissed, a choice you have been delaying, and a person whose silence has not meant what you assumed. Picture the room around you becoming still. The ordinary sounds fade into the distance. The air feels different, as though a door has opened somewhere you cannot see. In this fictional story, Archangel Michael does not arrive with thunder or blazing skies. He comes as a steady presence beside a weary soul, his blue light resting softly across the floor like moonlight through stained glass. His voice is calm, but there is weight behind every word. You have spent too long interpreting silence as rejection. The sentence reaches deeper than expected. It touches the memory you try not to revisit, the unanswered question, the conversation that ended too soon, the moment someone looked as though they wanted to say more but turned away instead. You told yourself you understood what happened. You built an explanation because uncertainty was harder to carry. But what if the version you accepted was only the surface? What if the silence was not emptiness, but a struggle taking place where you could not see it? 10 minutes. That is not a prediction or a supernatural deadline. It is the symbolic space between the person you have been and the truth you are finally ready to face. 10 minutes can pass while you scroll, while you stare through a window, while you rehearse an old disappointment. Or 10 minutes can become the beginning of a different understanding. The urgency is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken the part of you that has grown tired of postponing your own clarity. There was a moment earlier today when someone thought of you with startling intensity. They were doing something ordinary, standing near a window, holding a cup they had forgotten to drink from, watching people move beyond the glass. Then your face entered their mind so vividly that they stopped moving. It was not nostalgia alone. It was the realization that the distance between you had begun to feel less like protection and more like a mistake. They remembered something you once said. Perhaps you said it casually. Perhaps you do not even remember the exact words. But to them, it became a sentence that refused to disappear. I never needed perfection. I only needed honesty. At the time, they had not been ready to give you that honesty. They were afraid that revealing the full truth would change how you saw them. So they chose fragments. Partial explanations. Carefully controlled emotions. They believed that if they kept the deepest part hidden, they could avoid losing you. Instead, their silence created the very distance they feared. This is where the energy changes. Because the important message waiting for you is not simply that someone misses you. Missing you would be easier. Missing can remain private. Missing asks for nothing. What they are experiencing now is more demanding. They are being confronted by the consequence of leaving something meaningful unfinished. They are beginning to understand that silence does not preserve a connection. It slowly transforms it into a question neither person knows how to answer. You have sensed this unfinished thread, even when you tried to move forward. It appeared in small ways. A song reached you at the wrong moment. A familiar name surfaced unexpectedly. You woke from a dream carrying an emotion stronger than the details. Yet you resisted giving these moments too much meaning, because you did not want hope to become another burden. That restraint was not weakness. It was wisdom. You were learning not to build your future around signs, guesses, or imagined promises. You were learning to stand firmly inside your own life. But there is a difference between surrendering obsession and closing your heart completely. The question now is not whether you should wait for anyone. The question is whether you have become so skilled at protecting yourself that even genuine truth would struggle to reach you. In the story, Michael steps closer. The blue light shifts across the walls, revealing a narrow passage that had been hidden in shadow. At the end of it stands a wooden door with no handle. You cannot open this door by chasing what is behind it, he says. It opens when you stop abandoning what is within you. You look down and notice something in your hand, a small silver key. It has been there the entire time. The key represents a decision you have avoided. Not a decision about another person, but about your own worth. For months, perhaps longer, you have been asking, will they choose me? Will they explain? Will they return with honesty? But the deeper question has always been, will I choose myself even before I receive an answer? This is the first hidden truth of the message. The next chapter cannot begin with someone else rescuing you from uncertainty. It begins when you decide that your peace will no longer depend on another person's courage. That does not mean love is over. It means love must meet you in a healthier place. And somewhere, at this very symbolic moment within the story, the person connected to your unanswered question is reaching the same threshold from the opposite side. They have written something and deleted it. Then written it again. Their fingers hovered over words they had never dared to place together. They did not know whether to begin with an apology, a confession, or your name. Each opening sounded too small for what they needed to say. So they closed the message and walked away, only to return minutes later because the silence had become heavier than the risk. But something unexpected happened before they could send it. Someone entered the room. This person was not a rival and not an enemy. It was someone who knew them well enough to recognize the tension in their face. Without being shown the message, this person asked, "Is this about the one you never really stopped caring about?" The question broke through every defense. For a long moment, there was no answer. Only the soft hum of the room, the faint glow of the phone screen, and the reflection of someone realizing they had not hidden their feelings as successfully as they believed. Finally, they whispered, "I think I waited too long." Those words matter because they reveal the fear beneath their silence. They are not certain you would still welcome the truth. They have noticed a change in you. A new steadiness. A growing distance that is different from anger. Anger would have told them you were still emotionally waiting at the same door. But your calm has made them wonder whether the door has already closed. What they do not understand is that your calm was hard-earned. It did not come because you stopped caring. It came because caring without clarity was slowly exhausting you. You had to gather your energy back from every imaginary conversation, every replayed memory, every possibility that never became real. You were not punishing them. You were surviving the uncertainty they left behind. Now the story turns again, because the urgent message is not only about what they may say. It is about what you must remember before hearing it. Do not confuse an emotional confession with lasting change. Words can be beautiful and still arrive without preparation. Regret can be sincere and still require accountability. A person can finally understand your value and still need to prove they know how to honor it. Your heart is not a courtroom where they must be condemned, but it is also not a waiting room where they can return without transformation. Michael's presence becomes brighter, not blinding, but clear. His expression carries no anger. Only protection. Listen with compassion, he says, but do not surrender your discernment. This is why the message had to reach you now, before the symbolic 10 minutes disappear. You are approaching a moment when emotion may try to move faster than wisdom. Something could be said, revealed, remembered, or understood in a way that awakens the tenderness you have worked hard to contain. You need to know beforehand that tenderness is not permission to abandon your boundaries. You can forgive and still ask questions. You can care and still move slowly. You can hear someone's truth without immediately making it your responsibility. You can believe their feelings while waiting to see whether their actions become consistent. There is another detail you have not yet been shown. The person who walked into the room did not encourage them to send the message immediately. Instead, they asked one question: are you contacting them because you feel lonely, or because you are finally ready to be honest? That question changed everything. The phone lowered from their hand. Their eyes moved toward the window. For the first time, they had to separate longing from readiness. They had to consider whether they wanted relief from their own regret or whether they were prepared to offer you the clarity you deserved. The difference is enormous, and they knew it. They sat down. Then they began speaking aloud, as though practicing the confession they had postponed. They admitted that they had misunderstood your strength. Because you carried yourself with patience, they assumed you would always understand. Because you loved deeply, they believed you would always leave the light on. Because you did not force them to speak, they treated your gentleness as endless time. But time had done something they did not expect. It had changed you. Not into someone cold. Into someone awake. You began noticing how often you minimized your own needs to make space for another person's confusion. You began questioning why you called uncertainty a deep connection when it repeatedly left you without answers. You began realizing that real love should not require you to become a detective, searching for meaning in silence. That awakening is the true reason this moment carries urgency. You are no longer the version of yourself who would accept a vague explanation simply because it came from someone important. The person on the other side can sense this change, and it has forced them to confront a difficult possibility: honesty may now be the only bridge left. The largest revelation is almost here, but first you must see one final scene. In the fictional passageway, you place the silver key into the door. It does not turn at first. You press harder, but Michael gently stops your hand. You are trying to open it with expectation, he says. Try again with acceptance. You breathe. You release the outcome. You accept that whatever is behind the door may not be what you once imagined. It may be reconciliation. It may be closure. It may be an answer that sets you free rather than brings someone back. It may be the truth that your heart needed, arriving in a form your old self would not have recognized as a blessing. The key turns. Beyond the door is not another person. It is a mirror. For a moment, disappointment rises. You expected a face, a message, perhaps a reunion. But then you see the words carved along the mirror's frame. The urgent message was never that someone is coming. It is that you must not disappear when they arrive. There it is. The revelation hidden until now. Someone connected to your past may be closer to speaking than you realize, but the greater turning point is the person you will be when that truth reaches you. In the past, you might have rushed to comfort them, softened their responsibility, or ignored your unanswered questions because you were relieved they finally returned. Now you are being asked to remain fully present within yourself. Do not vanish into their apology. Do not shrink inside their emotion. Do not trade your clarity for the temporary comfort of being chosen. Stand there as the person you became while they were silent. This is not a message of fear. It is a message of preparation. Your heart may soon face something it once prayed for, but receiving what you wanted requires more strength than imagining it. You must be able to recognize whether the moment is truly new or merely an old pattern wearing more beautiful words. And now, with only the final seconds of the symbolic countdown remaining, the person in that quiet room lifts the phone again. This time, they do not begin with an apology. They do not begin with an excuse. They type your name. Then they write one sentence that reveals why they disappeared, what they discovered while you were apart, and the promise they are afraid they may no longer have the right to make. Their thumb hovers over the screen. But before they press send, they receive a message from someone else, a message containing a truth about you they were never supposed to learn. And when they read it, the confession they had prepared is no longer enough. The room fell completely silent. The person who had been preparing to send that long-awaited message stared at the screen, unable to breathe for a moment. The unexpected message they had just received did not reveal a scandal or a shocking secret. Instead, it carried something far more powerful. It was a simple observation from someone who had quietly watched your journey from a distance. It said, they didn't stop living while you were silent. They became stronger. Those words settled into their heart like sunlight entering a room that had been closed for far too long. For the first time, they understood that your quietness had never been indifference. It had been courage. While they had imagined you endlessly waiting for explanations, you had been rebuilding your confidence one difficult day at a time. While they feared facing their own mistakes, you had been learning to smile without depending on answers from anyone else. While they hesitated, life had gently shaped you into someone who could carry both hope and wisdom together. That realization changed everything. They looked again at the message they had written. Suddenly, it no longer sounded honest enough. They erased every sentence. No dramatic speeches. No attempts to persuade. No promises they were not yet prepared to fulfill. Instead, they began writing from a place they had never allowed themselves to reach before, a place of complete truth. In the fictional story, Archangel Michael watched quietly, his expression filled with calm certainty rather than urgency. The symbolic countdown that had seemed so important at the beginning was never about losing an opportunity. It was about arriving at the right heart. The 10 minutes represented the final distance between fear and honesty. Only now had that distance truly been crossed. Michael's voice became gentle. You wondered why this message felt so urgent. It was never because time was running out. It was because healing was finally ready to begin. Those words echoed through the quiet passageway as the mirror before you slowly transformed. Instead of reflecting your appearance, it began showing moments from your own journey. You saw every disappointment you survived. Every night you questioned your worth. Every morning you chose to keep moving anyway. Every act of kindness you offered even when your own heart felt tired. Every dream you refused to abandon. Then you noticed something remarkable. None of those moments looked like failure anymore. They looked like preparation. What once felt like endless waiting had quietly become the season that built your strength. Without realizing it, you had become the very person you once prayed you could be. The silver key that had rested in your hand throughout the story suddenly dissolved into light. You no longer needed it. The door that once seemed impossible to open slowly disappeared because it had never been locked from the outside. It had only been waiting for you to believe you were already enough. At that same symbolic moment, the other person finally pressed send. Not because they expected everything to return to the way it once was. Not because they believed forgiveness was guaranteed. But because honesty had finally become more important than comfort. Whether their message would begin a new chapter or simply offer long-awaited closure was no longer the central mystery. The greater miracle was that both hearts had reached a place where truth could finally exist without fear. Michael turned toward you with a peaceful smile. My beloved child, he said softly, real love never asks you to disappear in order to be chosen. It invites you to become even more yourself. If someone truly belongs in your journey, they will learn to meet the person you have become, not the version of you who lived in uncertainty. And if life leads you toward a different path, you will walk it with confidence instead of regret. The light around him grew brighter, filling every corner of the scene with warmth. The fear that had followed you through so many unanswered questions quietly faded away. In its place came something stronger than certainty. Peace. Not because every mystery had been solved, but because your heart no longer depended on mystery to keep believing in tomorrow. You understood at last that hope is not the expectation that every story ends exactly as imagined. Hope is trusting that every sincere step forward shapes you into someone capable of receiving whatever beautiful chapter comes next. Whether reconciliation arrives, whether a heartfelt conversation begins, whether a brand new opportunity unexpectedly enters your life, you are ready. Not because the world suddenly became perfect, but because you discovered that your greatest strength was never someone else's decision. It was the light that quietly continued shining within you all along. As the fictional vision slowly faded, Michael offered one final blessing. May your heart never mistake silence for your value. May wisdom walk beside your compassion. May peace remain with you during every unanswered season. May courage guide every choice you make. And may love, in its truest and healthiest form, find you exactly as you are, whole, hopeful, and deeply cherished. The light gently disappeared. The room became ordinary once more. Yet something within you was no longer the same. The urgent message had never been about racing against time. It had been an invitation to awaken to the strength that had quietly been growing inside you all along. Carry that strength into every conversation. Carry it into every goodbye. Carry it into every new beginning. And whenever your heart wonders whether hope is still alive, remember this fictional story and remind yourself that the brightest chapters often begin the moment you stop searching for your worth in someone else's silence and start recognizing it within your own soul. May peace surround you. May hope encourage you. May wisdom guide you. And may every new day remind you that your story is still unfolding with purpose. If this fictional inspirational message touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need a little hope today. Leave a comment with the words, "I choose hope," and let that simple declaration be a reminder that brighter chapters are always possible. Until next time, may blessings, peace, and quiet strength remain with you always.